So, welcome back. This is going to be the second part of our public-private coaching with Danitah. So, Danitah has won this public-private coaching from our first Unibet free roll by being the best player that has made an account through pokerimania.com. And I'm Aarnimetsa. So we are going to carry on with some of the 9 max hypers. And we actually had a short conversation during the break on that does Danitah have marked hands, and he said that he has posted most of his marked hands on our hand analysis forum already, and I think that's going to be pretty good. Like, posting the hands on the hand analysis forums is going to be one of the best ways to grow as a poker player, and also taking part in discussion for hands. Like, it's one part to post your own hands and get opinions on your own hands, but it's also one part to trying to solve some other players' hands. Like, every hand, it's kind of a puzzle to get the best idea on that. And I think that we are going to carry on for a few more heads up hands first. Then we'll go through hands that we haven't opened yet, or I haven't opened yet on the hand analysis forums. So
yeah.
So we are going through some of the latest hands there. So, but let's get back to this hand. What are we going to do from small blind, unopened? 10-9 off.
It's like 12 big blinds, so I think it's a very good shot.
It's a very good shove. And this is probably self-evident that it's going to be a fold. Jack deuce suited.
I'm not sure if it's a nice shot, but I think min raise could be good.
It's not a Nash shove, and I think min raise is probably going to be best until we know more from our opponent. I still think that even when this isn't a Nash shove, it's still going to be a profitable shove. So
Yeah.
even if I wouldn't be min raising, I would be shoving this rather than folding. And very good. Ace-8 off.
It's a shot.
Yep. Opponent made a pretty good call there. Pretty on the edge call.
Yeah.
10-5 off against an unknown heads up. 6.6. Turning adjusted big blinds deep.
I think it's good enough to shove.
I'm a bit on the edge here. I think it's going to be on the edge. I probably wouldn't shove.
Okay.
This is because we are having such a short stack size, and the stack size also pretty much cuts min raising from our options when we can probably get more fold equity from a shove there. So, and we are going to lose pretty much the same amount, or we are risking about the same amount because if we are raising and folding, we are going to lose so much of our stack size that even if we are getting it with worst equity as in a shove, we are going to there's going to be a lot of amount in play in the middle because
Yeah.
we would be raise folding about 1/4 of our stack.
Yeah.
And your opponent let you check here. Actually, this is one of those spots that what do you think that is the best way to approach this?
It's pretty unlikely that he hits this flop, so he might fold. He might fold quite much to that.
Our stack size pretty much prohibits us from betting wildly, but if some flop or if some flop against a random player would be a good flop to donk bet, this is going to be pretty much it because it's really unlikely that your opponent has anything. So this is actually a flop that we could donk bet pretty profitably, I believe.
Yeah.
And if your opponent checks and it's 10 comes, I think that the only possible way to get the flop would be to bet, and I think it's still going to. 10 isn't that good because when opponents limp there, they are going to have a lot of 10s in the range, but I still think that they are going to fold enough.
Mm.
And very good. This is actually more fun to like not take out the whip because you are doing pretty much what I say that would be the good equity move here. So there have been a lot of those situations already. So kudos to you. You have been playing pretty well in these spots still.
Okay, thanks.
And very good to stop getting your opponent more value when he calls the turn.
Mm.
And I don't even know what to tell what to say about the opponent in here. And this is an easy shove. Let's wait for our stack sizes. We are from the small blind with deuce 4 off. What should we do?
Uh, I'm not sure if we are too shallow to min.
I'm thinking that in this situation, I would look like our opponent has played really widely, hasn't folded to a bet yet. So
Yeah.
even when it's just 5 hands, I think that we can fold the absolute bottom of our range. And we can't have many worse hands heads up than deuce 4 off.
Yeah.
So I would think that fold is probably best, but if opponent would have we would see that opponent had already folded twice in 5 hands against a raise, then this would be an instant raise.
Okay.
But something like jack 5 off, if we don't have enough data, this is like one hand that he hasn't folded, then I'm pretty apt to raise something like jack 5 off. It's not going to be like it's not going to be a great hand, but it's going to be an okay hand still.
Mm.
And when we are being heads up, we don't want to be that picky on our hands.
Yeah.
And this is probably the main point that with your heads up, that in general the hands that you play, I think you have played pretty well, but I think there are opportunities to play the hands even better. This 10-7 suited, or 10-7 off, actually, let's go this to the beginning. Opponent limps. And in this case, I would be apt to check back. And this is because we have seen, the one hand we have seen our opponent limp had been pocket nines.
Yeah.
So this is a hand that we can realize some of our equity by just checking back, and I would like to shove against opponents that are likely, or like if we would have seen something like 10-9 from the previous hand that your opponent had when he limped, then shoving this would be way better because I think you would have more fold equity.
Yeah.
And we are likely winning this pot. But we can see that our opponent has twice limped with a pretty premium hand. And now I'd say that we should start trying to test our opponent, like how much does he really call? And let's see what's our situation. What do you think about what's the best play here?
This is a pretty tricky spot, I think. But yeah, I think we should bet that because it's a bit wet board and there's a lot of bad cards, like overcards and flush draws, straight draws.
I actually think that when our mid pair is sevens, I think that we are probably better off by checking back. I think we are, even when there are overcards, there are also plenty of weaker cards, and we don't have enough stack here to go for that. We would like to give any away. Like if we bet here, then our opponent, like let's say we are betting something like 300 here. Then on the turn our opponent had 1,500 chips left. Then we are at a harder situation than we are now, I think. And there aren't that many horrible cards that are overcards. And I noticed from our chat that Blank One had said hello, so hello to you as well.
Hi.
And I don't think that it's going to be that much different with 7 if you are betting or if you are checking. But something like a 10 or a 9, I would think that it would be way better to check.
Okay.
Check back. There would be more good cards on the turn and the river, and if we want to get money in, like actually the previous hand, we can look at the, or we can't look at the turn, of course, that there wasn't no turn. But in this case we can see that, like, if we want to start getting the money in on the turn, we can only bet 400 chips and then we will have less than a pot to get in on the river. So we are going to require only 2 streets of value to get stacks in.
Yeah, okay.
And thanks for the compliment on VG Say Rider on Twitch. trying to find more time to stream, and let's see how it works out on the summer. Opponent limps. I hope that we are not doing anything else than checking here. We are getting a gut shot. What do you think that we should do here?
Yeah, I think I like to check here.
I'm thinking that it's better as well. And check fold. Easy spot even with the gut shot.
Yeah.
And actually, I think this is going to be about, let's see what happens with you against this Bersinseu. There has been actually a lot of different opponents against you. Like there have been nits, there have been opponents that are 3-betting like maniacs, and there have been opponents that are calling just everything. So
yeah,
I think in these below stakes you can see a lot of different kind of opponents.
Mm.
And I like your check a lot. Lot on the flop. I thought that he would have the first one to act, so. But when we have seen that our opponent has played pretty much every hand, what do we do when he bets?
Uh, yeah, you have to call her.
Yeah. What's our plan for the turn when 7 hits?
Mm. If he bets again, then probably folding.
Yeah, if he bets again, we are done.
Mm.
There is like, I don't think that our opponent's range will consist of pretty much anything that we beat when he bets twice.
Yeah,
And we don't have any good draws. Like, if we hit two pair, there is a lot of opportunities for a straight there. So we don't have that many good cards, like another 6, but that's only 2 good cards. He doesn't bet. What's the plan for the river?
still same as turn, check and fold if best.
Yeah, this isn't the best possible river because the flush draw comes through, and that's probably the. And also there's 4 to a straight on the board, so every 8 has a straight here. So we're
Yeah,
just going to get a cheap showdown.
yeah.
And if we get a cheap showdown, we are winning pretty often. Mm, check the knob. That's going to be okay. We could also shove here. I actually think that with 10.7 big blinds and an opponent that has called too much, I think probably shoving would be a better option. But then with something like Jack 10 suited, a min raise would be better. Because there are so many more flops that you can play aggressively with a
Yeah,
suited hand.
yeah. Okay.
So I think shove would be better in here against an opponent that calls way too much.
Mm.
Opponent checks. What do we do?
Uh, I think we can check behind that. There's only 2 overcards and
Approved. I think that the checking here would be the best equity option, and we don't have that much to worry about when we are having the 10 as a. But there's then a question that would we want to bet for value, because there are also less opportunities for our opponents to. And our opponent checks the second time. What do we do on the turn?
now it's better to bet better.
Yep. I think when your opponent has checked twice, he has shown that he doesn't have a good hand in here.
Mm.
So, and there are going to be 2 different draws, or actually there are going to be multiple, because we are having 2 flush draws, and then we are having 2 different but still connected 2 cards. So there are a lot of gut shots and flush draws that our opponent can have here. So we are betting for value and denying our opponent equity with his gut shots. Opponent calls, and we are hitting one of those cards that we don't like. What do we do on the river?
Yeah, if he shows, then I think we just have to call. When he checks, then it's easy to check that.
I don't think actually that we have to call if he shoves. If
No,
he shoves here, then I would think that folding would be better.
yeah, that's what I said. Maybe not. Okay.
But in this case, when the opponent checks check back, it's going to be way better, because I don't think that you are getting value out of a 3 or a 4, or
Yeah,
even from a weaker 10. So,
yeah.
and we saw that our opponent didn't have a gut shot; he had a open ender
Mm,
on the turn. But still, I think you played
mm,
really well there. Except that on the pre-flop we could have shoved against an opponent that likes to call too much. And
okay.
this is adjusting to your opponent.
Yeah.
In here, the same opponent calls and you have 6-5 suited. What do we do?
When he's calling like a very big range, then I think it's a good shot.
I actually think that with something like 6-5 suited, we are gaining so much on the flop that it's going to. And this guy has called with pretty much with his whole range. Shoving
Yeah.
would be plus EV as well.
Mm.
Mm, I'm thinking still that I would like to check back here more.
Okay.
And the reason is that we can realize our equity pretty cheaply, and we if our opponent is calling a lot of what he limps. We have seen like pocket nines and ace nine thus far, so pretty value heavy hands.
Yeah.
And like if we check back, then we are also like our opponent has played pretty weak on the flops and on the turns. Like if he hasn't had anything, he had been checking, or if he has a draw, he had been check calling and he has been folding a lot. So there's also equity to be had on the flops to play the flops aggressively.
Yeah.
Like this kind of opponent that thus far has folded to any flop bet. Of course, there have been only one flop bet, so it doesn't tell that much. But like there are opponents that are like they're flopaholics.
Mm.
They want to see flops. Like every hand is a chance, and until you have seen the flop, you haven't. There is always hope for your hand. And
Mm.
those guys, those are might be that it's really hard to get those guys out of a hand pre-flop. But on the flop, if they haven't hit anything, they are going away from the pot pretty cheaply. So that's also something to try to take note on. Like if your opponent is folding a lot on the flop, but not a lot on the pre-flop, then we can get some additional equity against those guys by making the decision point on the flop.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
We are not getting this pot, I believe. And we can see that our opponent, it doesn't matter how good a hand he has, he's limping it.
Yeah.
He's a limper for life. And when we have had an opponent that's a limper and a caller for life, what do we do with pocket nines?
Yeah. It's a
What?
min raise.
Why?
Well, it might be that the shove is better.
I think against a guy that has flat called a lot and not 3-bet a single time,
Yeah.
I'm thinking against those kind of a guys, when we are having a mid to weak pocket pair, it will be way better to shove if we are on the edge.
Okay.
Like, if we are betting here, it's about 60% of the time that we are going to find ourselves on the flop that there is going to be an overcard to our nines.
Yeah.
So I think that shoving gets us out of sticky situations. And this is pretty rare that this is the first time your opponent has folded. He has been calling every single time before that. And limping a ton before that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, would you like a min raise better with tens maybe?
From pocket jacks onwards, I would like min raise better. But I think nines and tens are going to play better against this kind of a guy as a shove.
Okay.
And against a guy that, like, if we are having the guy like the Martin CZ that we had before,
Mm.
that shoved like 50% of the time, against those kind of guys, I still like to min raise pocket sixes. Like if they only fold or three bet, then we can gain an advantage on them to min raise even the weaker pocket pairs, because if they are three betting something like 30 to 50%, there are going to be hands that we are going to dominate with sixes, something like pocket deuces to pocket fives, ace deuces, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a bit that what we are thinking that our opponent will do with different parts of his range, and like what how does our hand gain equity or lose equity, and like something like pocket nines, if we are seeing a flop pretty much every time, we are having decent equity, but we are going to get into harder decisions. And if we are going to see five cards, no matter what kind of range our opponent has, it's going to be plus EV.
Yeah. Okay.
King deuce off. What do we do?
Yeah, I would probably like. Um, it might be a bit marginal shot, but
It's going to be a good shove.
okay.
It's going to be better against a guy that hasn't folded that much to just shove, I think.
Okay.
And I believe that we haven't gotten that pot either. Nope, we haven't run that well against this guy. He has had a great hands all the time. So perhaps I believe you that you have had some horrible bad beats during your time, even when
Yeah.
you have been running pretty awesomely. But I thought that this was an interesting heads up to see through, because this is all different adjustments that you need to make against different opponents. But
Yeah.
I think that you can gain a lot of value in this, and the main point in heads up is to that I'm thinking for you is to open more from your small blinds, because there are profitable opportunities that you are folding.
Okay.
And I think that during this session we have gone through like 10 spots that would be profitable
Yeah.
to play.
Mm.
And then let's go, because you are using the hand analysis a lot.
Mm.
Let's go through some hand analysis hands, because I think that's going to be pretty useful. Let's see what's there, because there's also blank one that has been playing the hypers.
Yeah.
So there have been probably some good spots, and there actually, when you are playing the same games, it would be pretty useful for you as well to look at what blank one has thought about some of these hands
Yeah.
and respond to those, because it's going to improve you a lot. And I have found out that streaming about poker and holding these coachings has improved my own game a lot,
Mm.
because it's going to be really hard to explain something if you don't understand it completely. So every time you are noticing that something is really hard to explain, you are always you are always improving your own game.
Yeah. Okay.
So like when you are finding that there is a hard spot for you to explain,
Mm.
when there's a hard spot for you to explain, then it's going to then try to concentrate on that. Like if you are going through blank one's hands and there is a like you want to write an answer but there's something hard, then it's also a good point to write about it, because then someone else might answer to also your question about it, and then you learn about something that you probably haven't understood completely.
Yeah.
But let's start with, there is a hand from Danitah about limp behind or shove. We are having a bubble situation here. And in this bubble situation, would you mind to explain this hand yourself and your thought process?
Well, it's pretty much the same as I wrote on the post, I guess.
So you
So if you limp, you can you can have the short stack eliminated more often because there will be a big blind in the hand as well. That's my main reason for limping.
I think in this case, I think it's probably going to be a bit better to shove, because when the short stack is already all in,
Yeah.
I think that you like if you are getting the big blind to fold, that would be a great scenario for you.
Mm.
So you would like to have any kind of fold equity for this hand.
Yeah.
And it's actually one point that I'd like to take up now when it's on the video, that in general I like that if people are removing the results, like when they are having the decision point, remove everything from that on, because when you are having the results in the hand, it will affect on how people are going to view the hand. Like I just recently read, I think that's the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Nobel winning Kahneman, that there was, I think it was in Duluth, Minnesota, that there was a problem with a dam, and they asked for with two different kinds of data sets from people that were outside the country. Like before there had been problems with the dam, like one group got only results from there hadn't been any problems, and then there is, should we allocate money to improve the dam? And 25% of the people that read that answered that yeah, we should totally fix that old crap up.
Mm.
And when there was another data set that had the had like a news article on that there had been a problem with the dam, and in the question there was that take only account on those situations that the people that were deciding at that time had at their disposal. So like don't use the data you know, but on that group 56% of the people were saying that you should totally fix the dam,
Mm.
because they had the results in their mind. So this is like when we are analyzing hands, and there are people like Calleon or me that have probably done thousands of hands, and like when the people even in that research study were asked about did it affect you at all that you knew what was going to happen, and everybody said that no, it didn't affect me at all. I stand by what I wrote as an answer. Like when we are seeing that two different people with the hindsight are going to answer differently, so it affected them. So that was probably the longest possible way to explain how you should post hands or how you should remove the last points.
Yeah.
But there is like, even when I'm answering to a hand, I probably feel that I haven't checked the results, and the results don't affect me, and I try to do it, but I know that when I have read the psychology that it will affect me. So likely you are getting better results if you are better answers for your hand when you are removing the results.
Yeah.
And there's blank one's answer. In my opinion, complete with intention of calling big blind is worse than a shove. Good thing of complete is scenario when big blind completes also, and then there's no sense of bluffing, and someone bets when they have something or wait to showdown. My first reaction here is to shove. I don't know if calling after complete is good. Holding Sources shows these two situations in advanced and basic. In this situation, like blank one says that there is like no sense in bluffing. I think that you are off in a way that, or blank one is off by thinking that there's no sense in bluffing, because by that there would be no apparent reason for bluffing. I think the big blind can use his large stack as his advantage and get to a heads up pot against the small stack, and like get your stack. Like, you are risking so much more that the big blind can apply pressure even post flop, and then you will need to have a solid post flop hit before you go for it. So I'm thinking that shoving would be way better. And actually, I think blank one had pretty good explanation here, except the one point that I don't agree completely. I'm thinking that that was a pretty good answer from blank one, and he has been taking his time to think about the answer. So that's pretty good.
Mm.
And that's pretty good also that we can see the Hold'em Resources calculator strategy, because that is usually pretty important. And then we should go through some other. There's actually, this can be interesting, because then we can compare on what we thought, and we can compare on what Caleon thinks. So this is the hand that blank one has posted. He's on the small blind, everybody folds to him. UTG +1 calls, and he's unknown, and our hero is on the small blind with ace-10 off. What do you think about this situation?
Well, I have actually, I have seen this before, so I know Galen's answer.
What?
I have seen this hand before on the forum, so I have seen Galen's answer too. So
Okay, you have seen Caleon's answer.
yeah.
But what do you think about this hand? And let's say that you you shouldn't let Caleon's answer affect your own idea.
That's hard to do. Yeah.
But well, I haven't seen Caleon's answer yet, so I can try to do an answer here.
Mm.
So I think in this case, when blank one says that he doesn't like an isolation out of position with ace-10 off, and when he gets called, I don't want to c-bet when I miss in early stage, and complete is better than fold, I think. Do I have to isolate? I think with 15 big blinds in here, the point isn't only that the options aren't to isolate. I think the sizing would be something like 3 or 3.5 big blinds. But I think in this case would be, would we want to shove or only complete this? And I think with all of the antes that are in play, like 0.1 big blinds, there are like 9 players playing the antes, so there are 2.4 big blinds. There is one limper. There's like 4.44 big blinds already in the pot. So that's so huge stack, so I would probably want to shove this. Especially against an unknown. Let's see what Caleon is saying. Shove. Yeah. Yeah. There are two hands left. Shall we go through them as well? I don't think that there should be an answer answering those, so
Yeah, we can.
we can go through these, and this is like practicing the analyzing of hands.
Yeah,
So it's going to be pretty useful. Pretty useful, and in this case, there are two unknowns that have called from cutoff and from button with 11 and 13 big blind stacks. And we
mm,
are in the small blind. What do we do here? Do we push here considering complete? What range should we push here?
I would. I would look at the first guy who wins. That is.
What?
I would look at the first guy who limps. If he's limping, if he's limping like 50% or something, then I think shove will be very good.
If we are carrying on with the presumption that our opponents are unknowns, so if I'm thinking about an unknown, I'm thinking about that we are having something like 20 hands, and the opponent is likely not. And the opponent is likely not a player that would be like some player that would play half of his hands. Even after 20 hands, you are not calling him unknown anymore because it's going to be so likely that he's like I'm thinking that if player is unknown, we are having like 20 to 50 hands on him, and he's something like 20 to 30, or let's say he's 20 to 30% VPIP, or
Mm.
15 to 30% VPIP, and probably 10 to 15% PFR. Like I'm thinking about what would be the average player that's unknown in the games. And if we are looking at an unknown player that would limp in these games, it would be probably something between 15 to 30% and 10 to 15% PFR. So it would vary from like a range of about 5% without the top 10% and some traps,
Yeah.
and also the other end would be like 15% range from about a top 15% downwards, and not the top parts. Would your would your recommendation for Ace 5 differ from the two different like the two different ends of unknowns here?
Uh, yeah, I think I would prefer. I would probably call this method or link behind. Yeah, I think link behind is better than fold.
I think in this hand, this would
Mm.
be a way different situation if we would be on the big blind, because then there wouldn't be a big stack to worry about. Or if the big blind would have only about 13 to 15 big blinds. I think if the big blind would have like 13 big blinds, this would be pretty easy shove, because the risk to reward ratio would be way more reward than risk.
Mm.
But in here, we are actually understanding like why the small to medium stacks are having an advantage on the stages that when there are big stacks behind, because we'll need to be tighter in here, and we are forced to play in a weird ways to play against the small stacks. So I think in here like we would be shoving against the shorter big blind. We would be shoving if we are being on the big blind with the same stack size. But I think in here actually complete would be I think complete would be the best option.
Mm.
But I would shove something like ace-9 off and probably any suited ace, any pocket pair. And then I'm going to shove some solid hands that are going to be something like king 10 suited and onwards, queen 10 suited and higher, jack 10 suited and higher, then king queen, queen jack off.
Yeah.
Then there is the other hand from blank one. What do you think about this hand? In here we are having a hand that UTG calls 1 big blind, 2 folds, cutoff calls for 1 big blind, button calls for 1 big blind, and hero is again on the small blind.
Mm.
That's a crappy spot. You can never play small blind well.
Yeah.
Like, the first limper is a total fish. Second limper is 29/25 after 95 hands. And the third limper is unknown. What would you do here?
It's not a good. It's not a spot you like to play when you're over 20 big blinds deep. But I think I would raise to 5 big blinds, 4 to 5 big blinds maybe. Yeah, so
If we are raising to 4 or 5 big blinds, then there's going to be the next question.
mm.
What is going to be our plan if we get shoved on?
It will be. Now I'm thinking of raising 4 to 5 big blinds might not be so good.
Like in this spot that there is like cutoff button under the gun, we can first go for the first hand that we thought about today. Because on the first hand I said something about the first limper can have a trap, but what about the next limper's ranges?
They are almost never going to have a good hand.
They are going to be weaker.
Yeah.
Like, if there is going to be 2 limpers already in the pot, and you are having something like pocket kings or pocket aces, you still want to raise because there are legit ways to get value.
Yeah.
So in this situation, if you don't, or if you are raising to 4 or 5 big blinds, what would you do if practically all of these players that are in the hand cover you already? So if you are, let's say you are raising to 4 big blinds,
Mm.
and one of these guys shoves, what is your general idea of doing?
It's not a good spot because
It's
yeah,
not a nice spot, but that's why it's in the hand analysis. It's
yeah.
in general there are no like easy hands that blank one has added there,
Mm.
so these are not the complete newbie hands, and they are all they are having a twist that makes them hard to analyze.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the best idea would be here that we are having a good hand, so we are betting, and when someone re-raises us, then we are going to be like Clay Davis on the wire, and we're shit.
Mm.
I think that in this case, I'm liking a race here. because we are we are not that small stack, but I think we are gaining some fold equity, especially for the cutoff, if we are raising here. And if we raise and someone four bets, I think like the first limper, even when he's a complete fish, if he shoves, we are probably never ahead of a fish's range that from the UTG that shoves and or limps and shoves after a raise. So it's going to be an easy fold. Against cutoff, he's going to risk a lot against button. So and he's going to have more traps in his range because he's 29/25. So he's not limping a lot. So even when he's the second limper, I would think that he would also have a better range. And only against button I would probably call because he's unknown, and I think that his range is going to be the weakest, and there is like no player that he risks more. But I'm thinking that in this case it would be so rare that we would be bluffed from one of our opponents, and I'd also think that it would be so rare to this be a multi-way pot if we raise. So I think raising is probably better than a shove here. And we are going to 3-bet fold against UTG and cutoff. And probably against button we could 3-bet call. Because of his range to start off would be weaker. And then his range is also... Even when he shoves, his range is probably still going to be weak enough. Does it
Yeah.
make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we could also limp behind, but I would like to limp behind with the suited ace here. I think that we are getting the pot often enough because of the fold equity that we are gaining in this hand. But this is actually a really good hand. This requires a lot of thinking, and I think that there will be other ideas as well, because also shoving here will net us extra fold equity, and shoving would be great in here if you would have something like 16 big blinds, because then like the UTG would be really hard pressed to call us because of the big stacks behind him. So we would get a lot more fold equity that we don't like deserve by our own stack size, but we are getting the fold equity because the players are risking so much of their own stack anyway.
Yeah.
But there was like that was a situation that needed some extra thought, and those hands took their time. I'm wondering, do we have time for something else? There have been now some of the good tips and tricks for the software. Is there some situation in game, like if we say that we are having the last 10 to 15 minutes on our coaching session right here, right now, what kind
Mm.
of situations do you feel that are going to feel hardest? Are they going to be the 3-bet situations, when you should call 3-bets,
Hmm.
when you should open, or when you should shove or min raise? What are you generally finding that what kind of situation is the situation that will make Danitah scratch his head on the tables?
Uh, that's hard to say, but I think I'm having. Well, we have already looked at heads up, but I'm having a lot of problem with aggressive opponents. I think.
Aggressive opponents in heads up.
Yeah.
Okay. We can try to look some aggressive opponents in the heads up. Mm, let's try to go in the middle of everything. And Blank One asks a question of what do you do when unknown shoves from UTG and we have ace king on the button? What would you do? Like this is probably what do you do when it's the first hand and an unknown would shove on UTG and you would have ace king on the button?
I would go with ace king pretty much always against an unknown.
I think that when unknown shoves, and that's the key point, when unknown shoves, I know that there are some regs, like I know some regs from 15s to 30s that are shoving even value hands, the first hands, especially on fishy tables because there will be a fish that calls with something stupid, and you should never call the weak opponent fishes. It's not good. So that was a mistake, mental game mistake. But I think that in general the players that are shoving the first hand and they are unknown, I think that the range is going to be so weak that ace king is going to be a call, and even ace queen suited would be a fold. And like getting the correct answer there, like I don't think that it matters that much that what the position of the opponent will have, because I think that when opponents are shoving during the first hands, they're not taking the position that much into account. And like if they are having something like pocket sevens or pocket sixes, we don't mind flipping even when there's ICM that much, because there will still be there will still be value in calling because there are more blinds and antes in game. Like there's 2.4 antes and big blinds in game, so there's like 10% more or like 5% more on the pot that if we are having full stacks early on. So, but let's go through the hands, and if we are having an opponent that's not aggressive, then we are just getting next hand so much that we are getting an opponent that's aggressive. That was not an aggressive opponent. Is this one an aggressive opponent? No. And Blank One says that on early stage risk premium is about 5%. Yeah, but as I said, that even against the even against the flips, we don't mind the flips that much because there's going to be the 5% extra on the blinds and antes already. So they are pretty much covering the risk premium, and we are making money on the ace jack suited and ace queens that some people shove. I think we are getting enough on against our opponent's ranges, and very rarely we are against the pocket aces or pocket kings against an unknown. But that's a good question, and I think that's something that you are having value on for your own games if you are checking, like do a poker tracker filter and filter those situations. What have people had when they have shoved like over 20 big blinds, and then try to calculate the good strategy against that kind of a range. I think Hold'em Resources calculator will do it pretty easily if you are just having a few hands. And this isn't an aggressive opponent. At least I don't think. Like we are having just a few hands on him, and
Yeah,
he's being pretty passive, and also we know that if he's folding 56% of the time, we can auto profit by min raising against him.
yeah.
So this is certainly not an aggressive opponent. This might be. And we are having a really crappy situation because we are so short. Deuced and suited, what do you do?
Uh, I would I would look at the Nash chart and see if it's short.
Nash charts would say that with ant-pace this is about 7 big blinds
Yeah,
deep shove.
I think it's a short. I'm not sure.
I think it's going to be a profitable shove even when it's outside Nash range. I don't think that an aggressive opponent is calling that much. Also, I think a lot of the aggressive opponents, they don't want to be calling as wide as Nash because they are thinking that you are their fish and they are going to abuse you and they can't abuse you if the game ends. So they don't want to be like, let's say, flipping. They want to be in a situation that they can try to abuse.
Yeah,
So against an aggressive opponent, I would like to shove. And I think most aggressive opponents will be thinking players, and when they are thinking players, they are also thinking that a random player will likely not shove as wide as Nash, so they shouldn't be calling as wide.
yeah.
And 8-7 off, it's not going to be a Nash call, it's not going to be even close. And it's a fold. And this isn't an aggressive opponent. The problem with finding aggressive opponents is that usually the heads up don't last that long against the aggressive opponents. 10-8 off. You are about 10 big blinds deep here. What do you think?
This is a fold. I think
What?
it's a fold.
Yeah.
I think this guy, well, the previous guy, I think he's the top guy on the Shark Scope leaderboard for these games.
Okay. I think like even when you are playing at $1.5 games, the guys that are on the top of the leaderboards, they are going to be quite good, but they are probably not going to be among the. There is a reason usually why people are staying at down, but there are some players that are honestly are going to be very good, and you can learn some good habits of them. Then they are just for some unknown reason they are staying at the low buy-ins
Yeah,
that I don't understand. I remembered when I did my $50 to $5,000 challenge that I remembered that I saw some players that I thought that were playing pretty good and they were playing at 50-cent games and I was like, what?
yeah,
Why is this happening? Of course there was only like one player that I had marked in a 45 man, but I remember the first time that I noticed the player. And at that time I think I didn't play any of them MTT sit and goes under $7, so it was really a surprise to see a player I had marked at 50-cent games.
yeah,
So is it this guy that's likely the top player on?
yeah, yeah.
Pretty nice hand. This gets nasty. What do you do here?
Uh, Actually, if I remember correctly, then I shoved this and I had some kind of track. It might be wrong.
I think in this situation, if we are having a player that has the VPIP of less than PFR,
Mm,
I'm generally thinking that this guy pretty close to never limps. And if he limps, there is a reason for it.
yeah,
And on those kind of guys, there are guys that will only limp traps.
Mm.
But there are also guys that are limping in this spot. They are limping something like deuce three, so let's say 10-3 off in this case because they think that it's going to be profitable against a random player that's going to be folding too much.
Yeah.
But until you know it, you pretty much need to play as if you would play against an unknown in the situation. Like you are knowing something about his range.
Mm.
But what would be the best option?
Yeah, I would like to check.
I actually think that with King 9 off, it's going to be a strong enough hand to shove. But if you get called by a trap, this is a mandatory time to write a note. Because
Yeah.
these kind of notes will make you a lot of money. Like, if you are writing a note that opponent limps, then when next time he's limping, you are probably going to tighten your range up somewhat. And if you are tightening your range and if you get dealt like, let's say, king queen off, that you can't fold even against a trap, and you shove and he has another trap, then you should add like a plus sign up after your note, and the next time tighten up your range even more when he limps.
Yeah.
And if on the other hand he's limping later on, you shove when you are having a better hand, let's say a king queen off, that's going to be and he limp folds, then it's going to be also like, then I'm thinking that then you should note like, this guy is a sneaky bastard. But then it's a bit like, then you'll see on your HUD that if you are having limp fold, then you can see that he has limp folded sometime, and then you have your note that it's still going to be probably more likely that he limp traps even when he has limp folded once.
Mm.
But when he limp folds, that's also noteworthy. Or it's not noteworthy if you are having a limp fold stat, because then you'll know that you'll have a situation on your HUD that will tell you that there will be an opponent.
Yeah.
Opponent can limp fold, and that's going to be also good information for you. Whoa. 7-4 off. It's going to be close, but it's no Nash call. This is not an aggressive opponent. That's going to be a bit hard in these games because you are having like 3 heads ups going on at the same time, so
Yeah.
downsides of running good that we can't get a good grasp on the heads up that matters.
Yeah.
10-3 off. Would you shove or not?
It's only 5.5 big lines, so I think it's good to show.
I think it's likely going to be a shove. And Blank One asked, what is the last amount of big blinds you can min raise folding heads up with weak hands? I think that if we are having a really tight opponent, we can go even somewhere like 6.5 to 7 big blinds, but that requires a really tight opponent. In general, like, you don't want to fold too much below 10 big blinds deep, but there are still opponents that you can, like, even when you are below 10 big blinds deep, you can limp and trying to abuse that way. But something like queen 5 off, it's like, it's going to be plus EV to shove with 10 big blinds, so it's not going to be a hugely profitable hand, but it's going to be a profitable hand. And this 10-3 off, even this is going to be about 5.5 big blinds adjusted. I think it's going to be a hand that you probably. I think it's going to be still close, but I think it's probably a hand that you should fold. Nash for 10-3 off is going to be about 3.5 when antis are taking into account.
Yeah.
And he's going to have close to 6 big blinds then, or over 6 big blinds, so. I think with something like 5 big blinds we can go, and 5.5 is. It's going to be a bit farther. Opponent shoves, ace 4 off. What do you do?
It's an easy call.
Yeah, you should be calling here. And that's quite a good board for your hand with ace 4 off. And now we finished the other what is called an aggressive heads up. Let's try to finish this other as well. Not going to be good enough to shove. Not going to be an aggressive opponent. And really easy hand to shove. When nothing is enough. I think this is going to be about the last hand, and this is going to be the time that we are starting to conclude our session. These last heads up when we tried to find an aggressive guy, they took a bit longer than the 10 to 15 minutes than I thought. But right now, if there's still any questions or comments or anything from you, we can have a small commentary at the end then.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything.
Okay. Well, then from my part, it's going to be time to end this coaching today. And this week we are going to have a lot of English stuff. Like on Wednesday there will be Kyberi with pot limit Omaha. On Thursday there will be Ulost Pro with heads up, and he has played I think 250 euro heads up tournament on PokerStars.French against French guys, and it has been a hyper heads up tournament. So, and I think we are going to take a look at those hands from that tournament. So it should be really interesting for everyone on short stack heads up. And then on the Sunday there will be my sit and goes or MTTs or whatever. I don't know yet. We'll do something else than 9 max hypers, as we are now doing 2 weeks of 9 max hypers in a row. And there's a question from Blank One that do you play calling Nash versus unknowns? And I don't call Nash versus unknowns. I'm a bit tighter than Nash because unknowns are not shoving. Unknowns are shoving a stronger range than Nash in general. So they are shoving a stronger range that's going to be a tighter range, so we don't need to call that much. And I think on that note, there is like, if there is if you are going to sleep, have a good night, and if you are playing poker, may this be a winning night for you. And is there something that Danitah wants to say?
Thank you for the coaching and bye.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone that has chatted. It's always good to see you on board. Thanks for Danitah to being brave enough to receive the whip for these hands. And I think on that note it's time to end, and bye.